Hello, this is Michel Leviathan Sorbet and you are watching a new episode on the Wojownik TV YouTube channel. There are some games which almost everyone knows. There are some games which occupied or still occupy the first place in the Board Game Geek ranking. One of such games is a hit published by GMT Games a couple years back, Twilight Struggle. This game was republished several times and published in many languages, including Polish. The Polish edition was recently published by Phalanx, and it is also Phalanx who decided to publish also the expansion for Twilight Struggle, which is called Turn Zero. This expansion, designed by Ananda Gupta and by Jason Matthews, was first published in 2015. Now, in 2020, we also have the Polish edition of this expansion. But this expansion will not only include the elements of Turn Zero, it has also inside some errata, some additional cards which will replace those published first by Phalanx in the Polish edition, and also additional promo cards. So this in fact will include 3 different sets of elements. The most important is of course Turn Zero, which will take us back to the dying moments of World War II, and when we will recreate some major events which shaped the state in which the Cold War began, and we will revisit them, verifying if the events went the same way that they did in history. So, for instance, we can check the outcome of the Chinese Civil War. Will it end just as it did in reality, or will the Kuomintang and Chiang Kai-shek prevail? If they do, the result will be a very different shape of politics and of the world map at the beginning of the stage when Twilight Struggle begins. So thanks to those additional elements, the initial setup and the start of play will be probably different than while playing with the standard game. Today I would like to show you those elements enclosed in this box, and I would like to tell a few words about my initial thoughts. So let's begin and let's check the content of Twilight Struggle Turn Zero. Here is the box of Twilight Struggle Turn Zero, published in Poland by Phalanx. This is a mini expansion, as I said earlier, in which we will find several additional components which will further enhance our Twilight Struggle games. This box, as you can see, has the same cover as the main game, and the sole information which indicates that this is something different apart from the size of the box is this small annotation that this is an expansion which is called Godzina Zero, Turn Zero. On the back side of this box we have a description telling us what is inside. First of all, it describes the basic concepts of this expansion. It lists the components. It also explains that in this Polish edition by Phalanx you will receive not only the expansion but also additional promotional cards and an optional space race track, and additionally some additional elements which will replace the elements found in the basic edition published by Phalanx, because there were some issues. 3 cards will be replaced by those inside this box. You will also receive one small tile which will replace the Defcon track, which also required to be corrected. Now let's take a look inside this small box. First of all, we receive a set of counters. As I said a few moments ago, you receive additional counters which will be used with the expansion, and the tile of the corrected Defcon track. So those counters are of the same standard as in GMT editions, as in the first edition of Twilight Struggle published by Phalanx. No issues at all. Then we receive the tile which will be the alternate space race track, as you can see, with different bonuses granted to each of the players who manages to achieve a superiority on this track over their opponent. So for instance, the Earth satellite will grant the player an additional bonus to his or her military operations. He'll get 2 points of military operations at the beginning of the corresponding phase. So this will enable him to concentrate on other aspects of the development of his superpower. He can focus on different things and still receive military operations. The other bonuses are also very interesting. Here, for instance, once during a turn, a player can re-roll a die during a coup. So this is also a very powerful bonus, which can in some cases change the situation in a region of the world where the current struggle takes place. We receive also some cards, as I mentioned earlier. Those cards will be of two types. They will be cards which will be replacement cards, but also some new ones which will be used with the expansion, so with turn 0. So here, for instance, we have a card during the second part of the game, Ruch Państw Niezaangażowanych, so a commonwealth of the countries non-engaged in the conflict. Mobutu Sese Seko, the Berlin Wall, Stanisław Pietrow, the flew on the Kremlin, RDS 1, etc. You get also one additional type of cards. Look at them, they are different. This is the USSR government card, and here we have, for instance, Yuri Andropov, then Nikita Khrushchev, Vyacheslav Molotov, Ławrentiy Beria. So different USSR Soviet politicians. And KGB. On the American side, you get John Dawes, you get George Marshall, Dean Acheson, and George Kennan, who are, of course, presented on cards with a different cover. I like it. It's very elegant, very pretty. As I said earlier, the replacement cards. So, for instance, Daniel Ortega is one of those cards which will replace the card originally published in the Polish edition of Phalanx, and one additional card, Ryszard Kukliński, which is also an addition and a Polish accent added. That's not all, because you also receive in this expansion, well, a small booklet or a leaflet which tells us how to play this expansion, explaining also the information about the historical background of the cards included in the expansion, and of course describing also the corrections to the first edition, and finally describing also the additional rules governing playing with turn 0. So as you can see, not a lot of additional rules, because this is not also a very big expansion. But alongside with those rules and those components, we get also some additional big-sized cards. As you can see, those are the alternate scenario cards, which will tell us how the outcome of some major events took place in our fictional gaming world. So, for instance, here it's possible that due to some events on the European front, it's the Western allies, so the Americans, the British, the French, the Polish armies on the Western front, who arrived to Berlin first before the Soviets. And it will, of course, change the initial setup and the initial location of some strength or some influence points on the map. The same applies to, for instance, the outcome of the Chinese Civil War or of Israel, or of what happened in Yalta and Potsdam, or what happened during the elections in the UK, because this event also influenced the British attitude towards further negotiation, towards further relations with the USSR. So those are interesting alternate scenarios which will differentiate each game, because they will create a unique setup during each play of Twilight Struggle. And that is it when it comes to the elements of Twilight Struggle Turn 0. Let's pass on to my final thoughts. Among the three different types of elements which are inside the Polish edition of Twilight Struggle Turn 0, I am very much interested by the elements comprising Turn 0. Because I do not own the Polish edition of Twilight Struggle, I still have one of the first English editions of this game, and I am quite keen on it. I do not want to change it. So the additional cards which replace the initial cards published in Polish won't be something that I am eagerly looking forward. The second element are the promo cards, and here I'm anxious to try them, because I always like new elements, and each even small change in the list of components of a game can really have a huge impact on gameplay. But the thing that I am most interested are, of course, the rules and the elements which are part of Turn 0. I like alternate stories, I like what-if situations, and this is something that really suits me. So I am very eager to give this expansion a shot and to try how the initial game will be different thanks to those elements. I will give you my thoughts about plays after playing this game several times using this expansion during a future review. Up until then, I invite you to take a look at our other videos, at our reviews, at our unboxings. Take also a look at our Facebook and Instagram accounts. Have a terrific day and see you next time.